Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pain Podcast by Pub Scientifique. My name is Bart van Buchem. I'm a pain specialist physiotherapist and I'm here as usual with Timmy Beams, co-founder Pub Scientifique and dear friend. Good to see you, mate.
Yeah, likewise.
Well, yeah. So we do these sessions. We're always enjoying it. So hopefully you're sitting comfortably, your seat or riding your bike, driving wherever you go, and
walking your dog.
Walking your dog.
Yeah.
We've had these conversations, or we had these comments from people listening to our podcast in various conditions. So everyone who's been in contact with us, keep us going, keep us connected, and keep us updated on what you're doing while listening to the podcast. And yeah, much appreciated all the messages that we receive. Yeah. So on that note, for the topic today,
Yes.
we're trying to, and the title is that we chose Pain and Identity, with a little bit of a subtitle. We can't, because it's such a massive conversation this could be, and we have only 30 minutes, so we want to see if we can focus on helping patients reclaim their sense of self. And I'm afraid we're going to run out of time anyway, even using this focus. But first, I also want to make sure that you know of the next thing we have introduced over the last weeks. There is a free membership. You can start with some bonus material and an amazing clinical action plan for you and your patient. And I think this one is on sleep, if I'm correct. And
the last one was yeah.
And you just told me we think if you just follow this, you're gonna be a brilliant clinician. This is it's a great resource, and there's nothing like that. So I think it's nicely curated. It's for free. Always like that. Always lovely to see what you're thinking, and to have a little bit of a sneak preview of what we do at Pub, coaching your, sort of like mentoring you through the complexity of pain and everything that comes along during your clinical journey as a therapist most of the time. So that's my shout out for the free membership. If you're not already there, if you're already a member, you already have access to everything. So don't worry about that. Cool. So what we probably gonna start from here. Hopefully you will have a slightly better understanding of what this self-concept and identity really means. We're going to explore some of these therapeutic strategies, and it will be quite cool if we can get to the level of practical conversation tools. So let's see if we can make this meaningful, right? So maybe my first question, and we decided, Tim, you're the expert here, so let's go from here. So who are you when pain takes away what you love doing?
Who are you? Yeah. I feel like I need to go back before this, because you said, "Oh, Tim's the expert," and
you want to make a disclaimer?
I think I'm caveat, disclaimer. Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't say I am. However, I have been really interested in identity and in different ways and awareness and what have you for a long time. And I just wanted to say that as you were talking, I was like racking my brains, but I remember the Neurodynamics and Neuromatrix conference in Nottingham in 2010, I think it was, something like that. And I did a talk, and the title was "What Touched My Arm? Hang on, Where Is My Arm?" And so I've been interested in stuff like that
for quite a while, for
a while, yeah. And people calling the body part it, or coming up with a name, or what you're saying here is, you know, being in pain takes away the sense of who I am. And you often hear people just say, "I just want to be me again," or "I wish I could roll back time," or "I no longer feel like me," or "I feel lost," or there's a whole bunch of really fascinating insights into what they sense of themselves and where their identity lies, and within that, often with pain, it's a loss as well, and with loss comes a whole load of really big challenges, like the loss of a sense of who you are, as maybe it might be of the earner in the family, of being able to earn money. It might be the loss of connection with your loved one or loved ones, and feeling like you're unable to fulfill that role, or connection in many other ways as well, with friends and family and work, and of the robust, strong person of being able to, carry your children to school, or to do housework, or, you can, and you hear it. And actually, if you listen out, you hear that theme in different ways coming up many, many different times. So I'm saying that to you now, and I wonder what your experiences are, but it always makes me feel quite sad.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can relate to that for sure. And you put out some very specific example, like people say it's an it, right? It's the arm. It's not mine anymore. Painful conditions are sometimes related to, from a, let's say, physical therapy point of view. We always tend to think about it, things get sensitized. So it's the more more feelings, usually the feelings you don't want to have. Interestingly, there's this loss of senses or loss of the body part. It's not being me. It's not part of me anymore, which is a very sad story. On the second hand, on the other hand, it also may have a role, right? There is a biology behind that. So probably let's focus a bit on the understanding this identity loss, because I think that's probably one of those layers when people say that. And the concept of, this is what they say, biographical disruption, or sociological, from the sociological literature. So how does illness interrupts the continuity of one's life story? Maybe that's where I wanted to start. So can you give an example of how you can relate to that in the clinic, how you pick that up, see that, hear that?
Yeah. So yeah, the sort of biographical disruption. It's like disruption in sense of self, and one of the classic ways of picking it up is the phenomenological perspective. So someone's ability to be able to relate who they are from the first person. But you also get that from a third person perspective as well. So if you have, for instance, I've been in conversation with a mother about her daughter. In fact, I've had a couple of conversations over the last couple of days where you're gathering information, but from the observer's perspective on that sense of who that person is, and how they have maybe shifted and changed in that person's eyes. So yeah, the most obvious places to start are in you listening and being open and being curious, and not being too presumptuous as well, because I think if you allow space for someone to really tell their story, then it will develop, it will come out, and it's in terms of when that happens, it can be quite an incredible experience. Now, an incredible experience doesn't necessarily mean easy, because often you give someone some space and you make them feel listened to and heard, and actually that can be quite hard and challenging and distressing, because it does bring a realization, the sort of the actualization of where they're at and how they feel, and and within that, perhaps that loss of sense of identity and sense of self as well.
Yeah, that makes me thinking of my patients who you're basically suggesting, like, do you ever felt like you lost your arm or it's not part of you anymore or you lost your identity in a way? Then I'm quite surprised that people, oh, yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what I never thought about it like that, but it's exactly those are the right words rather than saying it's painful or it's uncomfortable, saying, well, it's not me anymore. And it strikes me how people sometimes need that language to sort of
Mm.
get their heads around, and it's obviously also like a starting point to think about, like, how can you sort of starting re-engaging
Mm.
with your body part instead of fixing the pain or trying to reduce something. Maybe there's something that you need to increase. I,
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I was thinking about how does that relate to, let's say, the neurobiology. Is there a neurobiology of identity or the self?
I mean, that is a hard question there, isn't it? But
Where
let's
would you
if we
start?
if we if we took a sort of predictive framework here, then your hierarchical generative model of who you are and your sense of self in your world has developed and has sufficient credible evidence in many different ways of all these different connections
Mm,
to say, this is me, this is who I am Tim, Tim the dad, Tim the physio, Tim the whoever, but there are multiple identities within what makes up the whole, the me. And you can quite quickly see that if that is no longer evidenced, if there isn't if you want the feedback of I am dadding or I am physioing or whatever, then it creates an error. It creates an error in that perceptual loop. So at least at a theoretical level here, an error might be enough to arouse some sort of suspicion, and within that, whatever the physiological responses are that could come about having noticed the error in the sense of self. So at a threat perception or a stress biological level, you could see where a number of different systems would then have a role to play in dealing with that loss of self, of that threat of being unable to dad it, or not realizing that evidence of
yeah.
me as dad or me as physio or whatever. So yeah,
Yeah, or
I
me, or creating a new identity. I think, is it just loss of identity? So many people tell me that they don't feel themselves, right? So
yeah.
I'm not myself, but I am, for example, people who consider themselves as the back pain patient or the
Ah,
cardiac patient. So they basically got into a new identity they've never had before. So I found it quite interesting how that, and it also shifts quite fast when they feel more comfortable. So when I'm not in pain, actually I'm behaving, thinking like myself, and I feel pain, so I must be broken or I am fragile, and my world basically confirms that,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
therefore my identity becomes blah blah blah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
Well, and I think over time that's an inevitability, that if you have evidence saying I'm broken, I'm fragile, I'm unable to move, I'm, all of that, then you're saying, okay, let's map out a new identity. So, I mean, and in a way, this sort of brings us a little bit towards therapeutically where we might go,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
because on one level is the noticing, and I suppose the sort of subtleties and the nuances is noticing how narrative self changes over time.
Mm,
And the next would be if you want a reconstruction of self, or the construction of self anew, because I don't know whether you will ever be reconstructing what you had. It's always onward and forwards, isn't it? So I was just wanted to come back a little bit because you said about, people being feeling like they're fragile, and absolutely there's evidence there, isn't there, and I think credible evidence that if you feel fragile and breakable, and pain for you is an indication that there is harm and damage and what have you. That
Yeah,
then
yeah,
you
exactly.
see how
Yeah.
that informs actions and behaviors. But there's some interesting things within the narrative self that I remember sort of being fascinated with. Coming back to that talk, what touched my arm? Hang on, where is my arm? Is that I was interested in the CRPS patients where they would say, you'd hear things like, I don't know where it is, or unless I'm looking at my leg, it doesn't feel like mine, or I don't know it's there, or things like that. So you can already sort of see within the narrative, or you can see within the way that someone makes sense of whatever the parts of self need to be, those connections, so visually or from a movement perspective or touch, or you can see how all of those elements sort of feed the sense of maybe the broken self or the robust self or the lost self or the connected self. So yeah, I mean, to me now, there is great value in being able to know whether I utilize vision or utilize touch or utilize movement in the, I'm being careful, reconstruction, the construction anew of that sense of self.
Yeah, you don't start from scratch, right? So the constructivism paradigm probably fits quite nicely there, although it may be a way of looking at constructing, or I think reconstructing is a bit of a provocative term in that sense. Whether do we really reprogram or reconstruct? Probably construct on top of the existing, which is interesting. So it also moves. So whether you go from pain management to constructing something, right? And I think, are you managing your pain, or are you constructing something that shapes your identity? Let's move a bit forward there, because I think identity work as part of your rehab probably is another way of a direction you can take. So let's name a few options and strategies. Narrative reframing.
Yeah.
How
So
would you go about that?
yeah. So we've touched on this a little bit, haven't we?
Yeah.
But at a basic level, you can pick out some of the words that someone uses. So I can't do this, or I mustn't do that, or whatever. Like there's just the reframing. I've got a guy in my head that we were working on this reframing process, the narrative reframing, where we're coming up with new words to be able to more carefully use in certain contexts. So he's developing a new, to begin with, a conscious narrative around how he feels. That might be a part of the new you, if you want. That it might be, I'm strong, robust, healthy version of me, or something like that. And that's something to repeat over periods of time. It could be that includes, so coming to those connections, because it could be that includes what gives you that sense of narrative self as well, because people find that in many different places in their life. So, this links to valued goals and valued activities, and
That's basically the second strategy already, right? Finding and that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Is very much acceptance commitment therapy based kind of questions, if you like, if we looking for the literature.
And people, sorry, I'm jumping in here, but people often come to you asking what's wrong, and wanting to know why they're still in pain, and I see that as a sort of problem focused approach, and that can help, like understanding, but we can never truly know because we can't take ourselves back to that point in time when everything develops, but rationalizing perhaps why I am like the way I am, but it really is key to have something that you're working towards and a solution within that as well. So values are so valuable here.
And they're not all, but go for it.
But people will have tried to persist in doing what they want to do because they love doing that. And what we often have is the challenges that they can no longer do it in the way that they wish to do it or want to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, that was exactly where I was responding to, where if you're asking people what values to you, it's terrible question for some people, or they need quite a bit of help to untangle that idea, or maybe start thinking about that. And I'm not sure how your population in the clinic will be like, but my population is typically, if I'm asking this to 10 of my patients, I think 7 out of 10 would probably say, what is it, what you mean? I don't get it. This is a tough one. I've never thought about it. So they need some guiding through that question, and that may take some time.
That's it. And something like, what really gives you joy or happiness, or what really matters to you, or what are you passionate about, or there are some really sort of nice ways of phrasing that and bringing that about, and gets people. Again, I've got someone in my head where we were working on this fairly recently, and he said to me at the end of the session, he's like, I thought I started this session thinking I just want to get rid of pain, but what I realize now is I want to be strong, fit, and healthy. And that was a massive reframing there.
Yeah. So exactly. So that's a win, right? That's and that's not a small win. That's what could be like a small step in this self-restoration, or a little shift in finding some of that either new or constructed identity. You think what will be the first thing that you can consider as a win?
I spend quite a long time on this, actually, because I think it's important. So if we're sort of re-evidencing sense of self, if we're using that predictive model again, then you need to give enough evidence, plausible, credible evidence regularly, and notice it as well, which is an important thing to start to write a new set of rules, if you want, a new narrative self, a new identity. So I spent quite a long time. I stole this originally from Sharon Goulbert. She calls it the 3 gifts. And I spend quite a long time working on finding gifts in your day, in your week. Not just naming them, but revisiting them and re-experiencing them as well, because there's something amazing about, and the small win might be feeling the warmth of coffee in the morning before you start work, or being able to play with your children before bedtime, or sitting down and sharing a meal with your wife, and there's moments that you will experience moments, even though you may be in pain or you are paining at that time, there are still moments of joy, happiness, calm, whatever they might be. So being able to tune into those moments, and albeit that they might be challenging to find to begin with, there will be little wins that we can just pull in and use as our evidence going forward that change is possible.
So just in summary, I think what you put it so nicely there, when just reflecting on that, identity recovery doesn't happen in isolation. It doesn't happen without connection. So it typically needs a connection in whatever you do. It needs to be some sort of an experiential, even though it goes through talk therapy. But because I always also think that you can start by doing it, right? By behavior changing, doing different stuff and thinking about, well, if I would do it, but probably you should do it before you can actually think of that is fitting your bias or your identity. What I really love the idea of really understanding for people in chronic pain, my experience is the affordances. That's a different term, but people can't imagine that they will be able to do so. But once they've done it, they've been introduced it by doing it gently, the affordance is going to increase, and therefore at some point they found something massively interesting they never had done before, and that would be a massive step. So I'm gonna before we go into the practical and clinical approaches, that identity is co-created, and as a therapist you can be part of that creation. And expecting that it's hard to say people, just figure out your identity and you will work it out. So no, they need the guidance through exercise, touch, talk therapy, questions, exercises, and so on. So I think it's a very therapeutic approach which fits nicely within not just psychology, but especially within physiotherapy, osteopaths and chiro. Also, there's so much more you can do to implement that identity question and exploration for sure.
Yeah. Well, if you take affordances is an interesting thing, because let's say affordances are the possibilities and opportunities out there in the world for you to take action. At one point in time, you have your field of affordances. This is what you see as being possible and the opportunities available to you. But they aren't all the possibilities and the opportunities. And there's something beautiful about this co-creation of working together. And it's not just working one-on-one, but it's about having the right team around someone to be able to expand what we would call the landscape of affordances. So like, what are all the possibilities and opportunities out there? And how could we lean into some of those? How can we create? And that is sometimes you are the person taking the lead a little bit more, aren't you? Let's try this out, or have you ever done this, and why not give it a try? But eventually when someone gets that, they run with it, and they are themselves expanding their own field of affordances as well. So I like the idea of co-creation. For me, isn't just me and patient. It is the team. It's the patient in the middle, and it's them being able to move us in the direction that they want to go as well.
Yeah. So maybe we can move into this part where we can sort of thinking of how this practically you can start doing it, right? Even doing it gently. If you don't feel really comfortable in getting straight into the identity paradigms and discussions or talk therapy, but there are ways of doing that, I guess, right? So do you have perhaps some suggestions where questions or exercises could fit in slightly, slowly and gently exploring this paradigm of identity with patients?
Yes. Yeah. So moving from the sort of the listening and the space and the reframing, in that moment of noticing. I've got a couple of others actually. So we've talked about having found the words. So I actually have this for myself. So it's something that I write down is my values. So at a particular point in time, I'll revisit that and I'll put it on a post-it, and it's right in front of me so that I revisit it on a daily basis. So if you're writing a new you, and what you want that to feel or look like or sound like, then it's worth having something that is in front of you. It's something that you see all the time, or it's something that you repeat. We can repeat this in a number of different ways as well, can't we? And we don't have to just look at it. We can say it as well. Some people might meditate on a value as well, or on the sense of self. So there are a number of different ways of sort of bringing the sort of new into being. There are thought experiments, and there are movement and touch experiments. There are ways of us exploring these possibilities and opportunities, and creating opportunities for some of these small wins as well. So yeah, I think it's important with those is to see that then they don't always go perfectly, but they always give you information.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're creating the possibilities and the opportunities for my population, it's often we're trying to do it in a way that is sensible and safe to begin with, because pushing yourself too far and the impact that has just makes it disheartening, and you're like, no, don't want to try that again. So creating possibilities and opportunities for small wins in as many different ways possible, and that can be in connections with friends and family, it could be at work, it could be your sleep, it could be diet, it could be movement, it could be touch, and all how much goes into creating the human in front of you.
Oh, that's sort of makes it a nice summary already. So just going back to the first question that we got, whether we proposed in the start of this podcast session. So who are you when pain takes away what you love doing, or being the self? I think from my reflections onwards, this is, you can create a safe space when you can encourage exploration through experience, by even just doing your therapy, but making sure this place is encouraging people to be curious and practicing stuff that they have never done before, doing not aiming for the thing they always been done or they thought they shouldn't do. So I think it takes a lot on and then from that perspective, I think from my background as a physiotherapist and within psychology, within that framework, I can see there's plenty of time and space to see how does it feel, but what it may, is it you're doing this? And that's constructing that through like a series. So I'm not sure whether this is like identity therapy. I believe we're doing something we're already doing, but we can be more explicit about it and be more specific of that part. And I think that's probably, we want you to reflect on what conversation do you have that help patients already rediscover themselves, instead of what I'm doing wrong and what should I do more. Probably you're already doing it. In my view, that it's hard not doing it. And people will be different in the context of a encounter, especially within a clinical encounter. People already feel, do, behave, identify themselves differently in that space. So it's a great place where we are, when we can make quite a bit of difference. So
can I jump in?
Please. Yeah. I wanted to ask you if you have any more to add on.
As you're saying, and like you said, like this podcast, honestly, I'd love to talk about so much of these bits in much more detail. But I'm thinking about a lady I've been working with, and she was telling me, Tim, I'm exploring using different makeup for the first time in years. I haven't wanted to, I haven't felt the need to, and now I'm starting to explore. And I just think, coming back to your question, is what a beautiful bit of feedback for me to say that I am exploring new me's, and that's just lovely. And we do sometimes see that, and there's such a beautiful opportunity to be able to say, let's say someone has done their hair and makeup and looks, different, and what an opportunity to notice it and to say to that person, like, wow, you look great today, or whatever it is that comes to mind. And how are you feeling? And like, these are opportunities, like, to then, if that's the evidence as well, to go, like, I've put some effort in and I'm feeling a bit better, and for someone to even notice that I'm like looking and feeling a bit better is a brilliant thing, isn't it? To go, I'm going to keep it up.
Awesome. We keep going. All right. Yeah, that was a lovely one. So I think this is something to explore more. There's lots and lots of literature on this. Perhaps starting with Le Pub Scientifique, we have some sessions with Lance McCracken in the library, and there have been other conversations about this topic already. I think with Laura Rathbone, we had some conversations sort of touching on the identity and acceptance commitment therapy approaches.
I'm thinking of Bronnie Thompson as
Bronnie
well.
Thompson,
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
And
So there's quite a
Living Well
bit
with
there.
Pain, we had a great session with her as well. So
Yeah. So there's plenty to see. So you've been listening to Le Pub Scientifique, the Pain podcast, and if you like to read, see, and listen to more free episodes and discussions, head to lepubscientifique.com. You can join our free membership for some bonus resources and clinical reflection tools. That will be quite amazing. As we said, head to our website and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the button so people in and surround you will find out where and what we do.
That's it. Share as well.
Share it. Yes. Awesome. So thank you for listening again, and catch you next time. Have a great day.
Brilliant. Thanks.